Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Darius Burgan, and in this video, I'm going to give you 2 tips for improving your resume if you're looking for a digital marketing job. So the first tip is to keep your resume short. I look at so many different resumes and they have a ton of different jobs on them, a ton of different achievements, work experiences, all these different things. And while that's good and that's awesome that you have that experience, your resume becomes too long. I've seen some resumes that are 3-4 pages long, and at that point you're just going on about nothing. And I don't mean that in a bad way, that like we don't care as someone trying to hire you, we don't care that you got all this work experience. No. But the point is, if you need 4 pages in order to convince us that you're qualified for the job, then you're probably not that qualified, because being organized and being able to differentiate between your most effective and least effective items is a big part of digital marketing. And if you can't do that with your resume, most likely you won't be able to do that in the job position itself. So my advice to you, if you're trying to optimize your resume for digital marketing, is to keep it short and use the things that are most impactful. And by things, I should say work experiences. If your work experiences, let's say you worked at Coca-Cola, some local shop, and some small agency, and we'll just say you worked at the grocery store, don't include the grocery store. Include the agency. Put Coca-Cola first if it was digital marketing related, right? Because Coca-Cola is a big company. That looks very impactful. If they see that as the first item, or they see that on your resume, they're going to think, okay, wow, like you worked at a pretty big company. I'm now intrigued. This should be a little bit more interesting. Let me bring you in. Your resume is just to get your foot into the door so that you can get an interview. That's it. You don't need to make it seem like you're a genius or you're awesome or you're better than everyone else at that company. That's not the point. The point is just to look qualified enough so that you can get into an interview. That's it. So I highly recommend you keep your resume as short as you can. I like to stick to 1-page resumes. I fit as much as I can on 1 page, enough to convince whoever I'm submitting that resume to that I am qualified for the job. So sometimes that might include me only having 2 specific jobs on there, or maybe sometimes I might have only I might have 1 job, and then I might have kind of links and things to other things I've done, or I might have different projects on that 1-page resume. But I highly recommend you keep it 1 page or 2 pages max. And if it's 2 pages and it's not longer than half of the second page, you probably can condense that down and make it a 1-page resume. And the second tip is to keep it relevant. A lot of people apply to jobs and they use a resume. Like I said, they have a bunch of work experience and a bunch of different jobs, but it's not relevant. If I'm hiring for digital marketing, what you did when you worked at the laundromat or you worked at the grocery store is not that applicable to what I'm trying to hire for. Now, let's say that you don't have any other job experience and that's it. So at that point, you're probably not qualified. And let's say that for some reason you are qualified and you just need to persuade the person reading your resume that you're qualified enough. Don't include the things that you did at the laundromat or the grocery store that cannot cross over to digital marketing. At the grocery store, let's just say maybe you did some type of inventory stock. So maybe you had to deal with a bunch of numbers and you had to deal with some data, put some data together into a spreadsheet to see which items were selling the best and how you should stock it or whatever. If you did something like that, then maybe you can say, I did some data organization, which is like, okay, like maybe that could apply to digital marketing. Like I get where that's going. If you dealt with like spreadsheets and big data sets and all that stuff, it's like, okay, like sweet, that applies to digital marketing. But if you put customer service and I answered the phone, it's like, well, that doesn't really apply to digital marketing. So you need to find what it is in your job that, or what skills that you've developed in your job that can cross over and apply to digital marketing. So everything you put on your resume should be relevant. A good way to do this is if you look at the job posting, you'll see the language that that company is using when they describe the job duties and what they're looking for. If you have those traits and those qualities and possess those skill sets that they talk about in the job posting, you can do a simple copy and paste and put that as your experience. That serves two purposes. One, if they use a keyword matching system for organizing their resumes, like an automated system, if you're using the keywords that they used, most likely that'll allow you to kind of game the algorithm a little bit and show up above some of the other people who didn't do that. And two, when someone's reading your resume, they'll see exactly what they were looking for. If they were looking for someone who can handle Google Analytics and you said, I can handle Google Analytics, or I have this experience with Google Analytics, it's basically like a question and an answer. This is what they want, or supply and demand. This is what they want. This is what you have. It matches. Cool. That's a check mark off their list. So you really want to make sure that everything is relevant. Please do not submit a resume to someone and you have irrelevant experience on there. That's not to say you won't get an interview, because if your job market is very tight on digital marketers, then maybe you will. But if your job market is somewhat competitive and there are people who are not doing that, you most likely won't get the interview. So those are the two tips that I recommend for improving your resume. I'm not going to go really deep and tell you how to have your layout. I personally like to keep my layout simple. I don't add a bunch of pictures, or any pictures, honestly. I don't do a bunch of different colors, any of that. I keep it very simple, very basic, easy to print off, and I don't worry too much about that aspect. There are some people who like to include projects and things they've done as far as like case studies in their resume, and I'm torn on that. In one way, it's awesome. Like, that's a good way to kind of separate yourself. But at the same time, if they're looking at it in a system and they're like, I'm looking at these resumes that are 1 page and this resume is 6 pages, they might just gloss over your resume completely. What I think I would prefer people to do is to submit your resume and then find contact information for that company or HR rep, or if you know the exact person who's probably doing the hiring, then you can send them an email and say, hey, I submitted my resume. I also wanted to submit these documents, these case studies, to show you or to further back up my resume. That will allow you to keep your resume short just in case they use a system for filtering, and it makes it easy to look over. And then by following up and sending someone an email, or sending that company an email with additional documents, it shows that you actually can put in a little bit more work than submitting a resume, and you can find contact information, and you can structure an email, and you can do all these different things compared to someone who just submits a resume, or submits a resume with their additional documents attached, and they get glossed over because this resume filtering system, they do it by pages, or they look at it and just sort it completely different. Now, not every job does that, or not every employer does that, but you always want to keep all your options open, and you want to make sure that you're as flexible as possible. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thumbs up the video, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.